The first time I got bitten, I didn't even realize it mattered. It happened 3 days after the world ended, back when people still thought it hadn't. Back when the news called it isolated outbreaks, when officials stood behind podiums promising containment, when everyone still believed this thing had rules. We were wrong. I remember the smell first. Rotting meat mixed with something chemical, like burnt plastic. I was in a grocery store on the edge of town, pushing a half-broken cart, trying to grab anything that wouldn't expire. Canned beans, peanut butter, bottled water. The essentials for surviving whatever the hell was going on. That's when I heard it, a wet dragging sound. At first, I thought it was just someone hurt, maybe another survivor. I even called out, "Hey, you okay?" That was my second mistake. The thing that came around the aisle wasn't a person anymore. Not really. Its skin hung loose, like damp paper. Its eyes, God, its eyes were cloudy and unfocused, but somehow locked onto me with a hunger that felt personal. It lunged. I barely had time to react. The cart tipped over as I stumbled back, cans clattering across the floor. It hit me hard, knocking the wind out of my lungs. I remember the weight of it, the smell hitting me full force, and then pain. Sharp, burning. Its teeth sank into my forearm. I screamed, instinctively slamming my other hand against its head over and over until something cracked. The thing went limp. I shoved it off me, scrambling backward, clutching my arm. Blood soaked through my sleeve. My heart pounded so hard I thought it would burst. I knew what that bite meant. Everyone did. By then, the videos had already spread. People getting bitten, turning within hours, sometimes minutes. It wasn't like movies. No dramatic buildup. Just fever, confusion, and then they were gone. I sat there for a long time, staring at the wound. I thought about ending it right then. There was a knife on the floor, a few feet away, clean, sharp, quick. But I didn't do it. I told myself I'd wait, just a little longer. Maybe I had time to figure something out. Maybe I could at least get somewhere safe before it happened. So I wrapped the wound as best I could, grabbed what supplies I could carry, and left the store. I waited for the fever. It never came. The first night, I barricaded myself inside a small office building. I pushed desks against the doors, covered the windows, and sat in a corner with my back to the wall. Every ache made me flinch. Every drop of sweat felt like the start of something worse. I kept checking my pulse, my temperature, my breathing, looking for signs. I'd seen enough videos to know what to expect. The progression was always the same. But hours passed. Then a full day. Then two. By the third day, I started to think the impossible. I wasn't turning. I tested it in small ways at first. I stopped rationing water so strictly. I moved around more, risking exposure. Still nothing. No fever, no dizziness, no hunger for flesh. Just me. Alive. I didn't understand it. I still don't. Not completely. But one thing became clear pretty fast. I was different. Weeks passed. The city emptied out faster than I thought possible. Streets, once clogged with traffic, became silent corridors of abandoned vehicles. Buildings stood open and hollow, picked clean or left to rot. The infected zombies, as everyone started calling them, were everywhere. Slow at first, clumsy, easy to avoid if you were careful. But they changed. They always change. Some got faster, some got stronger, some smarter, in a way that didn't feel natural, like instincts stripped down to pure, efficient violence. And me? I learned how to survive. I learned which sounds attracted them and which didn't. I learned how to move quietly, how to pick locks, how to fight when I had to. I learned that a blade to the skull was cleaner than a gunshot and a hell of a lot quieter. Most importantly, I learned something about myself. I stopped being afraid of bites. The second time it happened, I almost laughed. It was outside a gas station. I misjudged the distance, got sloppy. One of them grabbed my shoulder and sank its teeth in before I could react. I killed it quickly. Then I just stood there, waiting. Nothing happened. No fever, no change. That's when it really sank in. I was immune. At first, I thought it was a blessing. I thought it meant I had a purpose. You grow up hearing stories about people who survive impossible things, who are chosen somehow. I figured maybe this was my version of that. Maybe I could help find a cure. Maybe I could save people. That illusion didn't last long, because being immune doesn't make you safe. It just means you die differently. The first time I met other survivors, I made the mistake of telling them. There were 4 of them, 2 men, a woman, and a kid no older than 12. They had a decent setup in an apartment complex with barricades and a lookout on the roof. They almost shot me on sight. I don't blame them. Trust was already a rare currency by then. It took a while, but I convinced them I wasn't infected. I kept my distance, moved slow, showed them I wasn't a threat. Eventually, they let me in. For a few days, it felt almost normal. We shared food, talked about what had happened, tried to piece together how far the infection had spread. They told me about people turning in hours, about entire groups wiped out because one person hid a bite. I listened. Then, like an idiot, I told them about mine, about the grocery store, about the second bite, about how nothing happened. At first, they didn't believe me. Then they got quiet. The kind of quiet that means something's about to go wrong. The older man, Rick, I think his name was, looked at me like I wasn't human anymore. "You're lying," he said. "I'm not. You're infected." "I'm not turning." The woman stepped back, pulling the kid behind her. "Get out," she said. I tried to explain. I told them I could prove it, that I'd been bitten more than once, that I was fine, and that was the wrong thing to say. Rick raised his gun. "Get out." So I left. And as I walked away, I realized something important. People fear what they don't understand. And in this new world, fear gets you killed. I stopped telling anyone after that. I stopped looking for groups, too. Surviving alone was harder, but simpler. No arguments, no betrayal, no one pointing a gun at you because you were different. Just me and the dead. Weeks turned into months. I moved constantly, never staying in one place too long. I followed supply routes, hit abandoned stores, scavenged what I could. I got stronger, colder, more efficient. I stopped thinking about the old world. That was my third mistake. Because the past doesn't stay buried. And eventually, it found me. It happened on a gray morning, the sky heavy with rain. I was moving through a residential area, checking houses for supplies. Most of them had already been looted, but sometimes you'd get lucky. That's when I heard the engine. A vehicle. I froze. Cars were rare now. Fuel was harder to find, and running an engine was like ringing a dinner bell for every zombie in the area. Whoever it was, they were either desperate or dangerous. I moved toward the sound, keeping low, sticking to cover. When I finally saw it, my stomach tightened. A black truck, reinforced with metal plating, windows covered with mesh. It looked organized. Military, maybe, or something worse. There were 3 people inside, armed, And they weren't just passing through. They were looking for something. Or someone. Then one of them pointed. Right at me. That's when I realized something else. I wasn't the only one who knew I was immune. And whoever they were, they had come to find me. The moment he pointed at me, everything in my body snapped into motion. I didn't wait to see if they'd call out or fire a warning shot. People who moved like that, fast, coordinated, confident, didn't hesitate. And in this world, hesitation got you killed. I turned and ran. My boots slammed against cracked pavement as I cut between houses, vaulting over a low fence and landing hard in someone's overgrown backyard. My breath came quick but controlled. Panic wastes oxygen, and oxygen keeps you alive. Behind me, I heard a car door slam, then another. They weren't staying in the truck. That was bad. I darted through a sliding door that hung half off its track, moving through the house without slowing down. Living room empty. Kitchen looted. Hallway. A corpse. Old, dried out. Not a threat. I kept moving, out the front door and into the street again. A gunshot cracked behind me. Too close. They weren't trying to scare me. They were trying to stop me. I veered left, cutting into an alley choked with trash and broken fencing. My shoulder brushed against a rusted dumpster as I squeezed through, ignoring the sharp edge that tore at my sleeve. Another shot. Metal sparked near my head. "Don't kill him," someone shouted. Him. They knew exactly who they were chasing. My stomach twisted, but I didn't slow down. I needed cover. Better than houses. Better than open streets. Something with multiple exits, narrow corridors, something I could use. I spotted it at the end of the block. An old clinic. Half-collapsed roof, broken windows, the kind of place most people avoided. Perfect. I slammed through the front door, wincing as it banged against the wall. The noise would draw attention, but I didn't have a choice. Inside, the air was thick with dust and that familiar, sickening rot. Not empty. Figures shifted in the shadows. Zombies. At least 6. Maybe more. Good. I slowed just enough to grab a broken metal pole from the floor, gripping it tight as I stepped deeper inside. The nearest one turned toward me, jaw hanging loose, a low groan rattling from its throat. "Come on," I muttered. It lunged. I swung. The pole connected with a wet crack, sending it collapsing to the ground. I didn't stop, kept moving, weaving through the narrow halls, making noise on purpose. Now, dragging them out, waking them up. By the time I reached the back of the clinic, I had a small crowd trailing me. Perfect. The front door burst open. Boots, voices. They came in here. Spread out. I ducked into a side room, pressing myself against the wall as the zombies shuffled past, drawn toward the fresh noise. Toward them, gunfire erupted. Short bursts, controlled, professional. But there were too many. Growls turned into snarls. The sharp crack of rifles mixed with the wet, tearing sounds of bodies colliding. I slipped out of the room and moved along the wall, keeping low, heading for the back exit. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The alley behind the clinic was narrow and slick with rain. I didn't stop running until the sounds faded behind me, swallowed by distance and decay. Only then did I slow, leaning against a wall, catching my breath. They hadn't just stumbled across me. They'd known, or at least suspected. And that changed everything. I moved for hours after that, putting as much distance between me and that truck as possible. I cut through neighborhoods, hopped fences, avoided main roads. By the time the sun started to dip, I found a place to hole up. An old hardware store. The front was boarded up, but the back door was intact. Locked, but locks don't mean much anymore. Inside, it was quiet. No movement, no smell. Safe. I set up in a corner behind the counter, stacking boxes to block the sightlines from the windows. I lit a small lantern, keeping it low. Then I sat, and I thought. Someone had come for me. Not randomly, not by chance. They had a vehicle, weapons, coordination. That meant resources, organization, a group. And if there was a group big enough to track people, then maybe the world wasn't as dead as I thought. That should have been a good thing. It wasn't, because groups meant power, and power meant control. And people with control don't ask nicely. I flexed my arm, staring at the faint scars where teeth had once sunk in. Immune. That word had felt like a shield at first. Now it felt like a target. If they knew what I was, what I could be, they wouldn't let me walk away. They'd cage me, study me, cut me open if they had to. I'd seen enough of the world before all this to know how it worked. Hope makes people desperate. Desperate people do ugly things. I must have dozed off at some point. When I woke, it was dark, and I wasn't alone. The sound was soft, a shift of weight, a breath that wasn't mine. I didn't move right away, just listened. There, near the entrance. Not the slow, dragging shuffle of the dead. Too controlled. Alive. My hand slid silently toward the knife at my belt. Easy, a voice said. Female. Calm. Too calm. I'm not here to hurt you. I almost laughed. Yeah, I said quietly. That's what everyone says. I stood slowly, turning just enough to see her. She stepped into the faint lantern light. Mid-20s maybe, dark hair pulled back tight, clothes worn but functional, a rifle slung over her shoulder. Not one of the three from earlier. Name's Elena, she said. You run fast. We stood there for a moment, measuring each other. She didn't raise her weapon, didn't move closer. Smart. You're being hunted, she said finally. They're not going to stop. I figured that out too. She nodded, like she expected that. I know who they are. That got my attention. Yeah? They call themselves the Division. Remnants of military, scientists, private contractors. Whatever survived, with enough structure to keep going. Sounds organized. They are. And they want me. They want what you are. I felt my grip tighten on the knife. And what exactly am I? I asked. She held my gaze. Proof. The word hung in the air. Proof of what? That this thing, the infection, it's not absolute. I shook my head. That's not how they see it. No, she said. It's worse. She stepped a little closer, lowering her voice. To them, you're not a person. You're a solution. Something cold settled in my chest. Meaning they'll take you apart piece by piece if they think it'll save the rest of us. Silence stretched between us. I searched her face for any sign she was lying. Why are you telling me this? I asked. Because I've seen what they do. And you just, what? Followed me here out of kindness? She hesitated. Just for a second. Let's say, she said, I have my reasons. I didn't like that answer. Didn't trust it. But she wasn't pointing a gun at me. And she hadn't turned me in. Yet. What now? I asked. She tilted her head slightly. That depends. On what? On whether you want to keep running. She met my eyes. or find out why you're immune in the first place. I let out a slow breath. Every instinct I had screamed at me to walk away, to disappear, to stay alone, that had kept me alive this long. But those people, the division, they weren't going to stop. And running forever isn't a plan. It's just delaying the end. Let's say I'm interested, I said. A faint smile touched her lips. Then you're going to have to trust me. I almost laughed at that. Trust in this world. But then again, I was already being hunted. Couldn't get much worse than that. All right, I said. Talk. She leaned against the counter, crossing her arms. There's a facility, she said. A few days from here, research lab. They were studying the infection early on, before everything collapsed. And if there's any record of someone like you. She nodded. It'll be there. I stared at her, weighing the risks. Walking into a lab full of unknowns? With someone I didn't trust? While being hunted by a militarized group? It sounded like a terrible idea, which meant it was probably my only option. Fine, I said. We go to the lab. Her smile widened, just a little. Good. I picked up my pack, checking my supplies out of habit. When I looked back up, she was already moving toward the door. Hey, I said. She paused. If this is a trap. She met my gaze, something unreadable in her eyes. It's not, she said. Then she stepped into the darkness. I followed, because for the first time since the world ended, I had a direction, and I had a feeling that whatever waited for me in that lab was going to change everything. We left before sunrise. Elena didn't waste time with small talk, and I didn't push for it. In this world, silence wasn't awkward, it was efficient. Still, I watched her. People revealed themselves in the way they moved more than what they said. Elena moved like someone trained light steps, deliberate pacing, always scanning, not jumpy, not paranoid, controlled. That made her more dangerous than the nervous ones. Facility's about 40 kilometers out, she said as we cut through an empty street lined with abandoned cars. We won't take roads the whole way. Because of them? I asked. Because of everything. Fair enough. The city thinned out by midday. Concrete gave way to stretches of open land, broken highways, and the occasional cluster of houses that looked like they'd been picked clean months ago. We kept a steady pace, stopping only when necessary. Around noon, we hit our first problem. A herd. You never forget your first herd. A dozen zombies is manageable. 20 if you're careful. But this was different. They filled the road ahead easily, 50, maybe more packed together in a slow, shifting mass. Their movements were uneven, jerky, but there was something else too, a kind of unintentional coordination, like they were being pulled by the same invisible thread. Elena crouched behind a rusted guardrail, motioning for me to do the same. Wind's carrying our scent toward them, she whispered. We go around. I nodded, but my eyes stayed on the herd. There were fresh ones in there. You could tell by the way they moved faster, more reactive, not the sluggish decay of older corpses. Which meant this area wasn't as empty as it looked. Stay low, she added. We moved along the edge of the road, keeping distance, stepping carefully through dry grass and debris. For a while it worked. Then one of them turned. It wasn't a full reaction, just a twitch, a shift of the head. But it was enough. Another followed. Then another. A ripple passed through the herd. Elena froze. Don't run, she said quietly. Too late. One of them broke off, stumbling toward us with sudden urgency. Then 3 more followed. Then 10. The herd didn't fully charge, but a chunk of it peeled away, drawn by movement, sound something. Elena swore under her breath. Now we run. We sprinted. Not blindly, there's a rhythm to escaping them. You don't outrun zombies forever. You outmaneuver them. We cut downhill, through a ditch, then up toward a line of trees. The ground was uneven, slick with mud, but we didn't slow. Behind us, the groans grew louder. Closer. They're faster than they should be, I said, between breaths. They're evolving, she shot back. Get used to it. That wasn't comforting. We hit the trees and kept going, weaving between trunks, forcing the zombies to break formation. One grabbed at my backpack. As I passed, I twisted, slamming my elbow into its skull, feeling bone give way. Didn't stop. Another lunged at Elena. She dropped low, sweeping its legs out before driving a knife up through its jaw in one smooth motion. Still didn't stop. We ran until the sounds faded. Then we kept running. Only when the forest swallowed everything behind us did we finally slow. We didn't speak for a while after that. Just leaned against trees, catching our breath. Finally, Elena broke the silence. You handle yourself well. Had practice. She nodded. I noticed. We set up camp deeper in the woods as night approached. No fire. Cold food. Minimal noise. Standard survival. But something had shifted. That herd, it wasn't normal. Not even by the new standards of this world. You've seen that before? I asked quietly as we sat on opposite sides of a fallen log. Elena hesitated. Something like it. And I don't think it's random. That got my attention. What do you mean? She stared out into the darkness, jaw tight. I think something's driving them. I frowned. They're zombies, not an army. You're sure about that? Her tone made me pause. You've seen how they've changed, she continued. Speed, reaction time, group behavior. It's not just decay anymore. It's adaptation. Or mutation. Same difference. Not really, I thought, but I let it go. So, what? You think they're coordinated? I think, she said slowly, we don't understand this infection as well as we think we do. Silence settled again. The forest creaked softly around us, wind brushing through leaves, distant sounds echoing in the dark. I should have felt uneasy. But compared to the open roads, this felt almost safe. Why are you really doing this? I asked, after a while. She didn't look at me. Told you, I've seen what the division does. That's not a reason. That's an excuse. That earned me a glance. Sharp. You don't trust me, she said. No. Good. She leaned back slightly, exhaling. I used to be with them. That landed heavier than I expected. With the division? She nodded. For a while. And now, you're not. No. Why? She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was quieter. Because I saw what they did to people like you. A chill ran through me. People like me, I repeated. She nodded. You're not the first. Everything inside me went still. What? They don't advertise it, she said. But you're not unique. Rare, yeah, but not the only one. My mind raced. How many? I don't know. I wasn't high enough clearance for exact numbers. But they exist. Yes. And what happened to them? She looked at me then. Really looked. You already know the answer to that. I did. I just didn't want to say it out loud. They didn't make it, I said. No. How? Experiments, exposure tests, dissections, when things didn't go the way they wanted. My stomach turned. They killed them. They told themselves it was for a cure. That doesn't make it better. No, she said softly, it doesn't. I stood, pacing a few steps away, trying to process it. I wasn't special. I wasn't the answer. I was just another subject, another resource. That's why they're hunting me, I said. Yes, not to save me. No. I let out a hollow laugh. Figures. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I turned back to her. Why didn't you turn me in? She met my gaze, steady. Because I'm trying to make up for it. I studied her face, looking for guilt, for lies. I found something real there, something heavy. You think helping me fixes that? I asked. No. Then why bother? She held my gaze. Because it's better than doing nothing. I didn't have an answer for that. We slept in shifts that night. Or at least, we pretended to. Every sound felt sharper after what she'd told me. Every shadow deeper. And somewhere in the back of my mind, a new thought had taken root. I wasn't just running from the dead. I was running from the living. Morning came gray and cold. We packed up quickly, moving out without a word. The lab was closer now. I could feel it. Not physically, but something else. A sense that whatever answers I'd been avoiding were waiting for me. By midday, we saw it. It sat at the edge of a clearing, partially hidden by overgrown trees and crumbling fences. Concrete walls, reinforced gates, observation towers empty, but intact. A research facility, or what used to be one. Elena stopped at the tree line. That's it, she said. I stared at the structure. Something about it felt wrong. Too quiet. Too still. Looks abandoned, I said. She didn't respond. We moved closer, carefully, circling the perimeter. The gates were closed, but not secure. Rust had eaten through parts of the metal, leaving gaps big enough to squeeze through. No movement. No sound. But the smell. Faint. Rotting. Not empty, I said. No, Elena agreed. We slipped through the gap and into the compound. The air felt heavier inside, like the place itself was holding its breath. The main building loomed ahead, its windows dark and broken. I tightened my grip on my weapon. Last chance to turn back, I said. Elena glanced at me. You first. I huffed, then stepped forward. Whatever this place held, answers, truth, or something far worse. The front doors were heavier than they looked. Reinforced glass, spiderwebbed with cracks, but still holding together. I had to put my shoulder into it to force a gap wide enough to slip through. The hinges groaned in protest, the sound echoing deeper into the building like a warning. We both froze. Listened. Nothing answered. Still, too quiet. Inside, the air was stale trapped, unmoving. It carried that familiar rot, but older somehow. Like whatever had died here had been left long enough to become part of the walls. The lobby was a mess. Chairs overturned, papers scattered across the floor, a reception desk shoved sideways like someone had tried to use it as a barricade. There were dark stains on the ground, old blood. A lot of it. They didn't leave cleanly, I muttered. No, Elena said. They never do. We moved deeper in. The hallways branched in different directions, each marked with faded signs. Administration, Lab Wing A, Containment. Containment. That was the one that caught my eye. You think they kept infected here? I asked. More than that, Elena replied quietly. We checked rooms as we went. Most were empty, offices stripped bare, storage rooms looted or decayed beyond use. Then we found the first body. It was slumped against a wall in a side corridor, wearing what used to be a lab coat. The fabric was stiff with dried blood, the face partially collapsed inward. Not a zombie, just dead. A bullet hole sat cleanly in the center of its forehead. Elimination, Elena said. They killed their own, I replied. They didn't have a choice. I didn't argue that, but it didn't make it easier to look at. The deeper we went, the worse it got. More bodies. Some in uniforms, some in civilian clothes, some not entirely intact. Signs of panic, of containment failing. Doors bent outward, like something had tried to force its way through, or something had escaped. We reached a set of double doors labeled Research Core. Locked. Of course. I glanced at Elena. She stepped forward, examining the keypad beside the door. The screen was dead, but the mechanism itself looked intact. Power's out, she said. We'll need to force it. Quietly, I added. She gave me a look. I'll try. It took a few minutes. Careful prying, controlled pressure. Finally, with a muted snap, the lock gave. The doors creaked open. The room beyond was different. Cleaner, less chaotic. Like whatever happened here hadn't fully reached this section. Rows of computers lined the walls, most dark, a few flickering faintly with residual power. Desks were cluttered with notes, files, and half-finished work. At the center of the room stood a glass enclosure, reinforced, thick, and cracked. I approached it slowly. Inside, the floor was stained, dark, layered. There were restraints bolted into the ground. Chains. Broken. They kept something here, I said. Elena nodded. Or someone. My chest tightened. I didn't need her to explain. I turned away from the enclosure, scanning the room. There's got to be something here, I said. Records, data, anything. Elena moved toward the computers, tapping a few keys. One of the monitors flickered to life, the screen dim but functional. Backup power, she said. Limited. Can you access anything? I'll try. While she worked, I searched the desks. Most of it was useless scattered notes, half-burned documents, personal items left behind in a hurry. Then I found a folder, marked Subject Files. My pulse quickened. I flipped it open. Photos, profiles, notes. Each page detailed a different person. Age, gender, date of infection, and one word stamped across each file. Immune. My hands tightened on the paper. They were studying them, I said quietly. Elena didn't look up. I told you. I turned the page. Another subject. Another immune. But the notes, they weren't hopeful. They weren't about cures or treatments. They were clinical. Cold. Subject 04. No visible deterioration post-exposure. Tissue samples resistant to viral replication. Further testing required. Subject 07. Immune response inconsistent. Partial mutation. Observed. Terminated. Subject 09. Hostile behavior. Increased aggression. Recommend containment. Upgrade. I stopped. Partial mutation? I muttered. Found something, Elena called. I moved to her side. The computer screen displayed a series of logs time-stamped entries from someone in charge. She scrolled, stopping at one near the top. Day 32. We have confirmed multiple cases of immunity. Subjects show no traditional signs of infection. However, extended observation reveals anomalies. Elena scrolled further. Day 41. Subjects begin to exhibit behavioral changes after prolonged exposure, increased aggression, reduced empathy, heightened physical response times. My stomach sank. Day 48. It is no longer accurate to classify subjects as immune. The virus is present. It is adapting. I felt a cold weight settle in my chest. Day 52. Conclusion. Subjects are not immune. They are hosts. The word hit harder than anything else. Hosts. Day 55. The virus does not kill them. It integrates, evolves. Elena stopped scrolling. Neither of us spoke. I stared at the screen, trying to process it. No, I said finally, that doesn't. It makes sense, Elena said quietly. I shook my head. No, I've been fine. I haven't changed. Have you? I opened my mouth to argue, then stopped. The second bite. The way I'd stopped fearing them. The way I moved now, faster, sharper. The way the herd had reacted earlier. No, I said again, weaker this time. Elena turned to face me. You said yourself they're evolving. That doesn't mean I am, doesn't it? I stepped back, shaking my head. This is just theory, old data. It doesn't prove anything. She didn't argue, but she didn't agree either. I looked back at the screen. At the final entry, Day 60. Containment has failed. Subjects have broken free. They are not like the others. They retain cognition. They hunt with intent. My breath caught. Day 61. If anyone finds this, do not trust the immune. They are not survivors. The words burned into my mind. They are the next stage. Silence filled the room. Heavy, unavoidable. I felt something shift inside me. Not physically. Something deeper. A crack in the foundation of everything I thought I knew. I'm not like them, I said. I wasn't sure if I was trying to convince her, or myself. Elena held my gaze. I hope you're right. A sound echoed down the hallway. Both of us froze. Footsteps. Multiple. Fast. Elena moved instantly, grabbing her rifle. They found us. My grip tightened on my weapon as the reality hit. The division. They hadn't lost us. They'd followed us. And now, they were here. The door behind us burst open. Voices shouted. Weapons raised. Don't move. I turned slowly. 3 figures. Armored. The same ones from the truck. One of them stepped forward. A man, older, hardened. His eyes locked onto me. And then, he smiled. Got you. Something about that smile made my blood run cold. Because it wasn't relief. It wasn't victory. It was recognition. Like he already knew exactly what I was. Drop it. The man's voice was calm, almost bored, like this was routine for him. I didn't move. Neither did Elena. 3 rifles trained on us. No shaking hands. No hesitation. These weren't scavengers or desperate survivors. These were professionals, what was left of them anyway. Elena, the man said, tilting his head slightly, was wondering when you'd resurface. So they knew her. That tracked. She didn't lower her weapon. Still following orders, Mason? She shot back. Mason smiled faintly. Someone has to. I glanced between them. You two know each other, I said. Used to, Elena replied. Still do, Mason corrected. His eyes shifted to me again, studying, measuring. And you must be the asset. I felt my jaw tighten. Not an asset. Everyone's an asset, he said. Just depends on their value. I adjusted my grip on my weapon. 3 of them. 1 of me. And Elena. Bad odds. But not impossible. Let's not make this messy, Mason continued. We're not here to hurt you. That's funny, I said, because it feels like you are. He shrugged. Only if you force us to. Elena stepped slightly in front of me. You're not taking him, she said. Mason's expression didn't change. I'm not asking. The tension snapped. The first shot came from the woman on Mason's left. Elena moved before the sound fully registered, tackling me sideways as the bullet tore through the space where I'd been standing. We hit the ground hard. Gunfire exploded. Move, Elena shouted. I didn't argue. We scrambled behind the central enclosure as bullets shattered glass and sparked against metal. The already cracked walls of the chamber gave way under the impact, fragments raining down around us. They'll flank us, I said. I know. I peeked around the edge too fast. A shot clipped the wall inches from my face. They were good. Too good to outgun directly. Back exit? I asked. I took a breath, then moved. I broke from cover, sprinting low across the room. Gunfire followed instantly, controlled bursts tracking my movement. 1 shot grazed my side. Pain flared, sharp and hot, but I didn't slow. I reached the doorway and slammed into the wall beside it, pressing flat. Elena, I called. She didn't respond. I risked a glance back. She was still behind the enclosure, pinned. Mason was advancing now, slow and steady, like he knew exactly how this would end. I couldn't leave her. Not yet. I grabbed a loose metal chair from the hallway and hurled it into the room. The crash drew fire. In that split second, Elena moved. She burst from cover, sprinting toward me. A shot caught her in the arm. She stumbled but didn't fall. I reached out, grabbing her and pulling her into the hallway. Go, she snapped. We ran. The corridor twisted left, then right. Footsteps thundered behind us. They weren't rushing blindly, they were tracking, coordinating, hunting. This way, Elena said, ducking into a side passage. We barreled through a door marked Containment Access. The air inside was colder, heavier. The lights here flickered faintly, powered by something deeper in the facility. Rows of reinforced cells lined the walls. Something had definitely gotten out. Keep moving, I said, but Elena slowed. Her eyes scanned the cells. Looking. Not now, I urged. Wait, she said. I grabbed her arm. We don't have time. Look. I followed her gaze. One of the cells at the far end. Its door was still intact, closed. And inside, something moved. Not like the others. Not slow. Not mindless. It stepped forward into the flickering light, and my breath caught. It looked human, mostly. Its posture was upright. Its movements controlled. Its eyes clear, focused. It stared at me, not past me, at me. Recognition flickered in its expression. What the hell? I whispered. Behind us, the footsteps grew louder, closer. We have to go, I said. But I didn't move. Neither did it. For a moment, everything else faded. The gunfire, the chase, the world. It tilted its head slightly, studying me. the same way Mason had. Then it spoke. You came back. The voice was rough, broken, but unmistakably human. My heart slammed against my ribs. I've never been here, I said. It frowned, confused. Gunfire erupted behind us. The moment shattered. Move! Elena yelled, dragging me back. I tore my gaze away, following her as we sprinted deeper into the corridor. But the image burned into my mind. That thing, that person, it wasn't like the others. And somehow, it thought it knew me. We burst through another door, slamming it shut behind us. Elena jammed a metal bar through the handles, buying us seconds. What was that? I demanded. Her face was pale. I don't know. You do. I've never seen one like that before. Like me, I said. She didn't answer. The pounding on the door started. Heavy, relentless. They're coming through, she said. I looked around. Another hallway. Another set of doors. No clear way out. We were cornered. I felt it then. That same shift from earlier. My heartbeat slowed. My breathing steadied. The panic faded. In its place, something else rose. Something cold, focused. I could hear them on the other side of the door. Not just the division. Something else. Movement. Scratching. Zombies. Drawn by the noise. And suddenly, I understood something. They're not the only threat, I said quietly. Elena looked at me. What? I stepped toward the door. Toward the sound. If we stay here, we die. I glanced back at her. Then we don't stay. The door shuddered under another impact. Metal bending. Splintering. I tightened my grip on my weapon. Then loosened it. Because, for the first time, I wasn't sure I needed it. Elena, I said. She met my eyes. If I'm not what I thought I was, I hesitated. Then maybe I'm something they should be afraid of. The door burst open, and everything went to hell. The door didn't just break, it exploded inward. Metal screamed as it tore free, slamming against the wall hard enough to crack concrete. Mason's team surged through the opening, weapons raised, eyes locked on us. But they weren't alone. The noise had drawn them. Zombies flooded the corridor behind them faster than before, more aggressive, their movements sharp and purposeful. Chaos doesn't begin slowly. It hits all at once. Gunfire erupted instantly. Mason's people opened up in controlled bursts, cutting down the first wave of infected. Bodies dropped, but more pushed forward, climbing over the fallen without hesitation. Elena, go! I shouted. She hesitated. Something inside me snapped into place. Not panic, not fear. Something colder, clearer. I stepped forward, toward them. Elena, I barked again. This time, she moved. I heard her boots retreating behind me, fading into the distance. Good. Mason saw it. The shift. He frowned, just slightly. What are you doing? He called over the gunfire. I didn't answer. The first zombie reached me. It lunged, jaws wide, and I didn't move. Its teeth sank into my shoulder. Hard. I felt the pressure, the tearing, the heat of blood spilling beneath my shirt. But the pain was distant, muted. I grabbed its head and crushed. Bone gave way under my grip with a wet crack. I dropped it, without looking. Everything slowed. Another came at me. I sidestepped, faster than I should have been, driving my fist through its face with a force that shocked even me. It went down, didn't get back up. Gunfire faltered. Not stopped, but changed. They were watching me now. "What the hell?" one of them muttered. I moved again. A third zombie lunged. I caught it mid-motion, twisting, slamming it into the wall so hard the concrete fractured. It slid down, limp. My breathing stayed steady. My vision sharpened. Every movement around me, every sound felt precise, controlled, alive. And for the first time since all this began, I didn't feel like I was surviving. I felt like I was something else entirely. Mason lowered his weapon slightly, not in surrender, in disbelief. "You see it now," he said. I turned toward him. Blood dripped from my shoulder, my hands, the floor beneath me. But I didn't feel weak. I felt strong. "This is what you are," he continued. "Not immune, not human, not like before." Another zombie rushed from behind him. I moved without thinking. Too fast. I grabbed it, twisted, and snapped its neck in one clean motion. Silence fell for a split second. Even the infected seemed hesitant. Mason smiled again. But this time, it wasn't cold. It was impressed. "You're exactly what we've been looking for," he said. I stared at him. "Yeah?" I replied. My voice sounded different. Lower. Sharper. "Then you've been looking in the wrong place." More zombies poured into the corridor. The moment shattered. Gunfire resumed. Desperate. But something had changed. They weren't aiming at me anymore. They were working around me, using me. "Fall back," Mason ordered. "Regroup at the exit." His team moved quickly, retreating while firing, keeping the swarm at bay. But they left a gap, a deliberate one, an opening for me. I saw it, understood it. They weren't trying to kill me. They were letting me survive, because they needed me, and that made them predictable. I turned, sprinting down the corridor the way Elena had gone. Behind me, the sounds of battle faded into chaos. But I knew they wouldn't stop. They'd follow. They always would. I found Elena near the end of the passage, crouched behind a partially collapsed doorway. Her rifle was raised, but her eyes locked onto me the second I appeared. For a moment, she didn't recognize me. Then she did. And something in her expression shifted. "Your shoulder," she started. "It's fine," I said. She looked at it. The torn flesh, the blood, and the fact that I wasn't slowing down. "That's not fine," she said. "It will be." She hesitated. "You felt that, didn't you?" she asked quietly. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. She nodded. We moved together again, deeper into the facility. But the silence between us wasn't the same anymore. She kept glancing at me. Not like before. Not like a partner. Like a question. Like something she didn't fully understand. Or trust. We reached a service exit at the far end of the building. The door was half open, rusted at the hinges. Fresh air leaked through the gap. "Out," I said. We pushed through. The outside hit like a shock. Cold. Bright. Real. We didn't stop moving until the building was behind us. Until the sounds of gunfire and chaos faded into nothing. Only then did we slow. Elena turned to me. "Really look this time. You changed in there," she said. I wiped blood from my hands, staring at the red smeared across my skin. I adapted, I replied. That's not the same thing. I met her gaze. Isn't it? She didn't answer right away. Finally, she shook her head. I don't know anymore. Neither did I. But one thing was clear. The truth we'd found in that lab wasn't the end of the story. It was just the beginning. Because whatever I was becoming, it wasn't something the world had seen before. And if Mason was right, then I wasn't just surviving this apocalypse. I was evolving with it. And that meant one thing. This wasn't a fight to stay alive anymore. It was a fight to decide what I was going to become. We didn't stop until the lab disappeared behind the trees. Even then, we kept moving. Distance meant survival. That rule hadn't changed, even if everything else had. We found shelter in an abandoned ranger station just before nightfall. It was small, isolated, the kind of place most people wouldn't bother checking. Perfect. Inside, the air was clean. No rot. No bodies. For once, it felt like we'd stepped out of the apocalypse, even if just for a moment. Elena secured the doors while I sat down heavily against the wall. That's when the pain hit. Not from the bite. From everything else. My shoulder throbbed, not sharp, not unbearable, but constant. I pulled my shirt aside to look at it. The wound was already closing, not healing normally. Faster. Too fast. Elena noticed. Her eyes lingered on it longer than she probably meant to. Still think you're fine? She asked quietly. I let out a slow breath. I don't think anything anymore. She nodded, like she understood. Maybe she did. We sat in silence for a while. Not the comfortable kind. The kind filled with questions neither of us wanted to ask. Finally, she broke it. That thing in the cell, she said. It knew you. I looked up. No, it thought it did. That's not the same thing. I didn't respond. Because the truth was, I wasn't sure. You ever been somewhere like that before? She pressed. No. You sure? That question hit differently. Not accusatory. Curious. Careful. I frowned. What are you getting at? She hesitated. Then, when all this started, where were you? The question seemed simple, but something about it felt off. I told you, I said. City, grocery store. I know that part, she said. I mean, before that, days before. I leaned back against the wall, thinking, trying to remember. And that's when it hit me. A gap. Not big, not obvious, but there. I stopped. Elena watched me closely. What? I rubbed my temples, trying to push through the fog. I don't remember. Her expression tightened. How much don't you remember? I swallowed. A few days, maybe a week. Silence, heavy. That's not normal, she said. No, I agreed. Pieces started shifting in my mind. The grocery store. The bite. Everything after that was clear. Sharp. Precise. But before? Blurred. Like something had been removed. Or hidden. That thing in the cell, Elena said slowly. It said you came back. I looked at her. What if? She continued. You've been here before. The idea hit like a punch to the chest. No, I said immediately. But it didn't sound convincing. Even to me. Think about it, she pressed. You're immune, or whatever this is. The division knew where to look. That lab had people like you. I shook my head, but weaker this time. What if you were one of them? The words hung in the air. My heart pounded. No, but the doubt was there now, growing. I don't feel like. Like what? Normal? I didn't even know what that meant anymore. Elena stepped closer. Memory loss, enhanced physical ability, resistance to infection. That thing recognizing you. She didn't finish the thought. Didn't need to. I stood abruptly, pacing. No, if I was one of their experiments, I'd remember. Would you? She asked quietly. I stopped. Everything inside me went still. What if I didn't escape? I said, slowly. Elena didn't answer. What if they let me go? The implication settled between us. Cold, unavoidable. A test, a field study, a way to see what I would become, outside of a cage. I laughed, short, empty. So this whole time, I said, I wasn't surviving. I was being observed. The thought twisted something deep inside me. No, Elena said suddenly. I looked at her. You're not their experiment anymore, she continued. You're here. You're choosing what you do now. Am I? I asked. Because if the virus or whatever it was changing me, how much of my choices were still mine? Silence answered that. We didn't sleep that night. Morning came slow, gray light filtering through broken windows. I stood outside, staring at the horizon. The world looked the same. Ruined, empty, waiting. Elena stepped up beside me. They'll keep coming, she said. I nodded. The division, others like them, anyone who hears about you. I know. And if what we saw in that lab is true, she hesitated. You won't stay the same. I didn't argue, because I could already feel it. Not something physical, not exactly, but something deeper. A shift in how I saw things, how I reacted. The fear that used to drive me was fading, replaced by something colder, stronger, more dangerous. What are you going to do? She asked. That was the question, wasn't it? Run, hide, keep pretending I was just another survivor. Or face it. Face what I was becoming. I looked out at the trees, at the broken world beyond them. Then I made a choice. I'm not running anymore, I said. Elena studied me. That's a good way to get killed. Maybe, I said. I turned to her. But if they're right, if I'm not just immune, I hesitated. If I'm something else. The words felt heavy, but real. Then I need to know what that means. She held my gaze. And if you don't like the answer? I thought about that. Really thought about it. About the strength I felt, the clarity, the way the infected reacted to me, the way that thing in the cell had looked at me, like I belonged. Then I decide what to do with it, I said. A faint smile touched her lips. That's the first thing you've said that sounds human. I almost smiled back. Almost. We gathered our gear, prepared to move. But before we left, I took one last look at the horizon, at the world that had fallen apart, and the one that was still forming in its place. Because the truth was, this wasn't the end of anything. It was a beginning, not of the apocalypse, but of what came after. A world where the infected weren't just monsters, and people like me weren't just survivors. I didn't know what I was becoming. Didn't know if I'd lose myself along the way. But one thing was certain. The next time someone came hunting me, they wouldn't find a victim. They'd find something else. Something that understood the rules of this new world and was ready to rewrite them. I adjusted my pack and stepped forward. Elena fell in beside me, and together, we walked into whatever came next.